Thank you for joining us, Mr. Mobius. My name is Paul. I cover global markets in South Korea. And you're a famous investor here, and South Korean investors are familiar with your name. And you run Mobius Capital Partners and the emerging market funds in Mobius Capital Partners. It focuses on small and mid caps, and it's exposed to South Korean equities. Would you explain about the fund, please?
Yes, our fund is focused on companies that are overlooked by most other people. In other words, companies that are not in the index. So as a result, the portfolio tends to be more into medium and small size companies. Of course, some of the companies could be quite large, but as long as they're not in the index, we tend to favor them. Now, the reason why we do that is that we want to be different from other investors. Other investors are looking at companies that everyone else knows. So the information is quite widely available. Whereas in our case, we want to be in companies that many people may not know about, but where there may be good value. So that's the reason why our approach is quite different. If you know that many of the people that invested in ETFs or index funds lost quite a lot of money last year because China went down. China represented 30% of the index, and Russia was 7%. So immediately, overnight, they lost 7% of their portfolio. So that's the kind of thing that we want to avoid. We don't want to follow the crowd. We want to do something different from the crowd.
So which sector do you focus? Which sector do you prefer in this environment?
Well, the first area is technology. We want to be in the tech sector, and that involves particularly software. Companies that are creating software for enterprises, for governments, and for individuals. That's one area in the tech sector. The other area is in semiconductors, particularly these fabulous companies that do the software and design for semiconductors. And the third area is hardware itself, some kinds of tech hardware such as cables, that sort of thing we want to be in. Now, the other area besides technology is in medical care, particularly medical testing. As you know, with COVID, medical testing is now becoming more and more important. And even without COVID, people are more aware of the need for medical testing. So that's the area we want to be in. And the final area is in building materials. In other words, materials where there's some innovation in terms of building materials, such as high strength steel rods and that sort of thing.
So I think you're investing in growth stocks then, right?
Yes.
Yes. The next question is, are we heading to a global recession? Export matters to this economy. Are we going to have a recession?
It's quite possible that we could go into a recession, particularly if interest rates continue to rise, which they probably will. The confusing point now is that in the United States and other parts of the world, unemployment is very low. So you have an unusual situation where interest rates are going up, consumer sentiment is low, but spending is high. So in other words, people on one hand are saying that they're worried about the economy, but on the other hand, they have lots of cash to spend. So the whole scenario has not been played out yet. We just have to watch and see what happens. But if interest rates continue to rise at a fast rate, then of course, we could have a recession.
What's your opinion on the Fed's rate hike course? I mean, what's the what's the terminal rate going to be?
You must remember that the Fed and other central banks around the world have a sort of a playbook, you might say. In other words, a terms of reference that they use. And one of those terms of reference is the need to raise interest rates higher than inflation. Currently, inflation in America is 9%. That means the Fed must raise interest rates to 10% in order to beat inflation, according to their opinion. So 0.75% is very, very little. There'll be much, much higher rate rises as long as inflation continues to be at this high level.
So next question is about currencies. EM currencies are plunging, and Korean won is down like 10% so far this year. Is dollar going to be strong for the rest of the year and perhaps next year?
Yes, I believe the dollar will continue to be quite strong because with higher interest rates, people will be attracted to the dollar. Also, because of the general economic uncertainty, people tend to move towards the dollar or to gold. And that is what we're going to be seeing going forward.
So the last question is about reunification. I watched an interview that in that interview you said reunification of two Koreas is a beautiful combination, and there's going to be massive economic opportunities for foreign investors like you. You said you're going to invest in Han Peninsula if two Koreas are reunified. However, U.S.-China conflict is intensifying, and Russians are still in Ukraine. Some people say there's going to be a Cold War again. And I think international politics really matters for Han Peninsula. Do you think reunification is still possible in this landscape? And are you going to invest in?
Yes, I do believe that reunification of North and South Korea is possible because, of course, the cultures are the same, the languages are the same, and there's a great desire for some kind of reunification. But it will have to be on a step-by-step basis. I think the initial stage perhaps might be economic reunification, where there is more and more investment on both sides, and then gradually move towards actual political reunification. So yes, I do believe it is possible, but it will take time.
Do you have any advice for retail investors and institutional investors in South Korea, because they are struggling from recent sell-offs?
Yeah, I think it's frightening for many investors, of course. But I think for the South Korean investor, they must be very, very mindful of the need for diversification. In other words, don't put all your eggs in one basket. So, for example, if you're invested in Korea 100%, that is somewhat dangerous. So it's a good idea for the South Korean investors to invest globally. Invest something in the US, something in China, something in Taiwan, something in different countries, so that they can diversify their risk.
Thank you, Mr. Mobius. I think our interview can be it's done. Yeah, we hope to have you again. Thank you, Mr. Mobius.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.